Countdown to the big one. It's the Open men's final between New Zealand and Australia. The Aussies are going to be hot favourites here. Can the Kiwis get up there and pull off a surprise upset? Let's go back to our commentators, Brendan Telfer and Ken Laban.
It's a tremendous reception for the Australian and the New Zealand teams here for this, the final match of the 1991 World Cup tournament. It's the New Zealand team with number 6 John Rangahuna, a 29-year-old from Christchurch, being introduced to the crowd. Behind him Alan Wallace, Dion Dean, and a familiar figure there, number 9 Eric Rush, a member of the New Zealand Sevens, of course, a rugby team, a very fine, accomplished rugby player in his own right, and also one of the best touch footballers in New Zealand. There he is, and we'll be seeing the tremendous speed of this man in action this afternoon, and the New Zealanders are going to need plenty of it up against the Australians, who start very much as the favourites for this match. This is the Australian team, who have been equally as impressive as their women here at Avondale this week. They've been unbeaten in their 9 matches. They've scored 120 tries in those 9 matches, so they've only conceded 10. So they've been winning their matches with a scoreline of something like about 12-1. They've already beaten New Zealand once this week, and the only time the two teams met, that was 4-1, a convincing win to Australia, 4-1 in the round-robin section. And they also strolled through to the final with a 9-0 win over Western Samoa. Now, this is the New Zealand lineup. That's the team of 14, led by Peter Walters, a 30-year-old from Auckland, and a couple of familiar figures there, of course, in the form of Eric Rush, number 9, and Mac Hedawini, who's the son of the 1960s All Black Mac Hedawini. And this is the Australian lineup of 14. The captain, number 4, Scott Notley, with 4 members of the side, back from the team that won 3 years ago at the Gold Coast in 1988. And the match underway with the New Zealand starting the match and sweeping quickly onto attack a few metres from the Australian line. And there's Eric Rush, number 9, getting his first touch as he comes in again at dummy half. Familiar figure of Eric Rush, holding the ball in one hand. We should point out that the ball they use here is a lot smaller than the rugby ball we see in either of the 2 rugby or league codes.
Yes, they're very keen to maintain the momentum of the game, and obviously with a smaller ball, Brendan, it's a lot easier to pass, a lot easier to catch, and as a result, you can expect there to be less errors in the game. So, as a result, there's a lot of play in the game, a lot of use of the football.
And the crowd are all happy with that decision from the referee, thinking that the Australians might have fumbled the ball and that New Zealand should have received possession, but that's not the way the referee saw it. So Australia, with their first opportunity, sweeping onto attack. They're only a couple of metres short. That's slipped back to Sam Ayoub. This is number 10, Stephen Mueller. This is a very fine Australian side. We're going to see some great touch this afternoon, some great skills from this Australian side, and the New Zealand team will have to be at their very best to keep them out.
One player to keep an eye on is that number 7, Sam Ayoub, who just turned that ball inside.
There it is, the first try coming from Stephen Mueller. It's only taken the Australians 2 minutes. They're ahead by 1-0.
Yeah, Sam Ayoub, the big play, came to turn the ball inside. Have a look at him here, steps off the right foot, goes back to the wing, turns a great inside ball into the player backing up to score a terrific try for Australia.
So desperate dive there from Eric Rush, but he couldn't get a hand on Mueller, and Australia already up to a 1-0 lead. Wally Riffle down within a couple of metres, slips it back to Dion Dean. Riffle again. He's got the New Zealand captain, that's Peter Walters there, but he's heavily marked by the Australians. And this is Mac Hedawini.
Very clever player, Mac Hedawini with the ball. Very elusive and a great stepper off both feet. He'll be a major threat to the Australians later on in the game.
Now, can we see the New Zealand team bringing the match virtually to a standstill here within a few metres of the Australian line? What are they trying to achieve here?
What they're trying to do is they're trying to draw one of the Australian players out, dump the ball quickly and try and scoop the ball up from dummy half. There they go there with a dummy half run.
Well, that was close. Good combination there from Peter Walters and Wally Riffle. But in fact, the pass going astray, that final pass right on the Australian line. And the Aussies come away with a fresh set of 6. Stepping away was Darren Shelley. They've had 3 and they've already made 30 metres. Turned back by Adrian Lamb. Running on fast and hard was Julian Mann. Darren Shelley. Adrian Lamb across to Shelley. And and Julian Buckmaster out there on the wing. They do have positions in touch football. The real speedsters are out on the wings, on the respective flanks of the field. Then you have the link men and the middles.
Yeah, the link men fill the role traditionally, as most footballers would understand, to be centre, and the middles fill the 5/8 halves role.
As we said, the real speedsters, as is the case, of course, in the rugby codes, out on the wing. The Australians fumbling the ball, an opportunity here for New Zealand with 6 touches.
Yeah, that was an unforced error by the Australians there. Sam Ayoub trying to cut out pass only 20 metres out from the line.
Now, how constructively can New Zealand build this attack? They've got still 5 touches of this passage left, and they're only 15 metres from the Australian line. And there we see again Michael McCurran trying to draw an Australian opponent out to create the little gap. McMurran decides to go on his own. The Australians didn't buy the dummy. 1-0, Australia ahead.
I think what New Zealand would be better off trying, Brendan, at this early stage in the game would be to constantly turn over quick play the balls so they can run the Australian side out of a bit of petrol, because there's plenty of enthusiasm and plenty of fitness in the side. I think by holding the ball up and delaying it and trying to pull one, all they're doing is allowing them time physically to recover.
And we'll see from this Australian men's team, also very good fitness and great speed. They have the ability to play the game at pace right to the final whistle. Sammy Ayoub carries it up, running aggressively at the New Zealanders, up to halfway. And again, the Australians with this wonderful ability to make very quick yardage. John Marinos, Bob Brindel, crossed to number 14, Ray Somerville, the Queenslander, picked up by the New Zealand defence 10 metres from the line. That was 6 for the Australians, but they, in fact, traversed one end of the field to the other. Good handling from the New Zealanders. Michael McCurran, Eric Rush.
The New Zealand side just slowing the game up now while new subs come out onto the field and prepare for a defensive set. This is their last play of the ball, and it'll just be one pass football, turn it over to the Australians. And look for the Australians now, in contrast, to take the ball up quickly and gain some good yards.
I sometimes wonder, Ken, with the lead players involved in this game, the frustration of not being able to kick on that last touch.
Yes, traditionally what they do try and do in touch football, Brendan, is on the last touch they'll try and move the ball to the sideline, so you can only present the opposition with one option, and that's to go the open. Because if they turn the ball over in the middle of the field from the first turnover, automatically the team in possession of the ball have got 2 options.
Most of the Australian team, in fact, are regular rugby league players during the winter months. There's a couple of union players in the side. Number 10, Stephen Mueller. The Australians pulled up for a forward pass, and so New Zealand receive possession 5 metres from their own line.
The player that just got beaten by the touch here, number 2, Adrian for the Australian side. He's captain of the Western Suburbs side in the Brisbane Metropolitan competition, which is part of the catchment area of the Brisbane Broncos.
George Rogers for New Zealand. Gary Knapp, who's come onto the field for his first part of the match, showing great speed. Gary Nepper slips it back to Nigel Houghton, and little Gary Nepper, he really showed that he can scoot. Caught the Australian defence almost napping there with his speed.
Yeah, he was terrific. He came in off a quick play the ball, scooped the ball up, came back in on the angle. It was only, again, a little bit of good anticipation from the Australian side that shut the break off.
Now the Australians, again within striking distance of the New Zealand line, they lead by 1-0. As Scott Notley, the captain, decides to have a little probe on his own. Now they, in turn, slowing the game down, trying to pull the New Zealand defenders off their line. Shane Rigby across to Julian Mann. Buckmaster can't hang on to it. McMurran has it for New Zealand.
This is better play from the New Zealand side. Again, they managed to catch the Australians inside the 5-metre area, got themselves a penalty, so they get possession of the ball and another opportunity to improve their field position.
So when a player plays the ball or rolls the ball, it's the roll ball, they call it in touch. The opposing players must retire 5 metres. And scampering away is Fred Barnett for New Zealand. Opportunity here again for Barnett. Australian defence, well organised.
Yeah, that was a great defensive play from the Australian captain, Scott Notley, to come in and shut off the outside pass by the New Zealand player.
Alan Wallace couldn't get away from the Australian defence, and so that's the end of the New Zealand 6. Chance for Australia to add to their score of One try scored in the 2nd minute of the match by Stephen Mueller. 9 minutes of the first half, 2 25-minute spells, 7 players on the field at any one time, and 7 respective substitutes in the interchange zone on the sidelines who can come on at any stage as well.
The referees at this level of competition are very, very tough on fumbles or incorrect movement of the ball around the play the ball area. Brendan, you'll find that any form of minor fumble area will result in a turnover.
Bob Brindel, a member of the Australian team at the last World Cup, slips it back on the angle to Scott Notley. Notley appeals for the try, but the referee says he saw a New Zealand hand touch his jersey. Notley disagrees, and so the Australians must come back.
Again, it was a 50-50 call on the referee, and the benefit of the doubt should always go to the defender. That was a good decision from the referee.
Well, the 2 referees this afternoon, Peter John and Mick Dupila, are both Australians, so there can't be any question of favouritism here with the referees, or certainly in a call like that, or any hometown decisions being given with 2 Australian referees. It's Dion Dean again trying to draw the New Zealand defence out.
Yeah, well, the Australians really have been the pioneers of touch football, Brendan, and it's appropriate too that these 2 Australian referees, who are regarded as the best referees in world football, are taking the fight.
Up almost to the line is Brindel, looking for Jim Marinos, but Eric Rush and John Rangahuna had him covered there a couple of metres from the line. It's Craig Pearce again. Adrian Lamb.
The Australian side, they're not under any pressure because they've got the football, and they've also got the benefit of good field position. The pressure at the moment is on the New Zealand side, and see the Australians are quite comfortable just to stay down this end and keep the ball alive by passing it amongst themselves, because they've got the benefit, Brendan, of a 1-0 lead.
This is Bob Brindel, 10 metres from the try line or the touchdown zone. Interestingly enough, in Australia, you in fact have to force the ball once you get across there, as is the case in rugby or rugby league. So the Australians have had to adapt and change their game here, because in New Zealand, you don't have to force the ball to get the try. Rather like American football, you only need to make your way into that zone.
You see the New Zealand with the style of football that they're using at the moment. They're trying to keep the ball close to their sub-bench so they can turn over the fresh players coming on quickly.
10 minutes of the first half in Australia. Lead New Zealand by 1-0 in the final of the 1991 World Cup.
You'll note that these players on both sides, Brendan, in comparison to rugby union and rugby league players, are much smaller and extremely athletic in terms of their ability with a football.
Yes, I'd have to say that there's not much room for the 15 or 16 stone forward in this sort of sport, is there?
No, definitely not. It's really a game for the speedsters and the guys with the great ball skills and good sidesteppers.
Nigel Horton for New Zealand. The Rangahuna, and you notice how the ball is very seldom stationary. As soon as it hits the ground, a hand comes in, scoops it up, and it's important that the ball doesn't stay on the ground for too long to allow the opposition time to regroup.
Yeah, and opportunities come New Zealand's way when they have quick play the balls and manage to catch the Australian side inside the 5. Those opportunities will only come if you force the pace of the game and play it at a quick pace.
So now the New Zealanders again down within that 5 or 10 metre zone of the Australian line, but this is where they seem to have their problems. This is where they don't seem to have any real clear strategy, Ken Latham.
Yes, Brendan, they shouldn't be doing this again because there's not much time gone in the game. They want to be forcing the pace of the game. By runs like this, inside passes, backing up, short balls, really put pressure on the Australians and not hold it up 2 or 3 metres behind the advantage line.
Well, there was an opportunity there for Richard Barnett, who came through on the angle at speed. Maybe he shouldn't have made the pass. As it turns out, the Australians now have the opportunity to run at the New Zealand line. Sammy Ayoub.
Yes, the Australian touch football side, like their rugby union and like their rugby league side and their other great sporting sides, Brendan, are very, very organised. With the way that they play this game, they use organised sets of 6.
Ayoub slips over it and takes the ball into touch. And the crowd suggesting that should have been a possession turnover to New Zealand. However, through goes number 4, Scott Notley. And there it is, that's the second try of this first half, and Australia out to a 2-0 lead. Their captain, Scott Notley, bit of controversy here.
Yeah, and again, the big play came from little Sam Ayoub, who was involved in the earlier try. He ran wide, he turned an inside ball this time to that man there, Scott Notley, the captain from Queensland, and he finished it off to put Australia ahead 2-0, which is valuable.
Well, it certainly did appear that just prior to that pass there from Notley that Ayoub had, in fact, slipped over and gone into touch. But, however, that's not the way the referee saw it.
Yeah, I think the referee, Brendan, ruled that he'd been touched before his feet went out. So he ruled to play the ball first rather than go for the feet out over the touchline.
So Australia up to a very useful 2-0 lead midway through the first half. So New Zealand are going to have to start posting some tries before half-time to stay in this match.
If you make the comparison, Brendan, of watching the New Zealand side now down this end of the field, and then have a look at the Australians when they get down to the New Zealand end, and see there's a very distinct difference in the styles.
And this time the New Zealanders had an opportunity with the dummy half crossing the line. He couldn't score the try, but he couldn't make that final pass.
Yeah, again, there, I think there was a lack of anticipation from some of the New Zealand players on the left-hand side of their play there. We just see the final part there, the New Zealand guy going in from dummy half, but again, he couldn't clear the pass to the player for the touchdown to be scored.
It's Wally Rifle who's playing a dummy half there. Now, just repeating that rule again, the dummy half cannot score the try. He is allowed to cross the try line with the ball in his hand, but once he's there, he must, in fact, make the pass to a teammate before the try can be awarded. And the final passes we saw there went astray. Score remains at 2-0. Australia again. Shane Rigby picked up on the line.
That was a great touch by little Mackie Harawini there, coming across, covering the back of another New Zealand player that committed to the earlier touch. This man here has been a big player and had a major influence in this game, little Sammy Ayoub.
It's the little Sammy Ayoub, number 7, who in fact spends much of his time in Australia managing many of the top rugby league players in Australia, like Jason Williams, Ewan McGrady, Matt Burke, and Mike McLean, the Queenslander. And the referee, the Australian referee, just explaining to the Australians who have questioned one of his decisions there, and he's making it very plain to Sammy Ayoub that the New Zealander in fact did make a touch on his jersey. That's not the way number 7, Sam Ayoub, sees it. Experienced play. He's the top try scorer, incidentally, here at the World Cup. He's got 19 prior to today's match.
Yeah, and he's given the last pass for both tries that the Australian sides have scored already today. He's a terrific player.
And Sam looking for number 20, but he didn't get it as he was touched just before he crossed the line. McKenna Winnie again playing a dummy half. John Rangahuna running hard and aggressively, picked up, scooped up by Wally Rifle. Rifle again, through the gap goes Wally Rifle, but
again he ran from dummy half and got tagged, so it's a turnover, Australians ball.
Australia ahead by 2-0. Australia winning 4-1 during the week in round robin play when these two teams met. They are the defending world champions. They've never lost a game at 2 world tournaments. Went through 1988 on the Gold Coast unbeaten, and they've won all 9 matches here at Avondale this week.
The ball is on the ground for a considerably longer period in the New Zealand side than it is for the Australian side. Again, which is in the Australians' favour, Brendan, because they do get time to recover while the ball's out of play or while the ball's dead.
Elusive running from Peter Walter, slips away from one Australia. Good hard running from Barry Clemens, takes it up to within 20 metres of the Australian line. Rangahuna, but he's running into some pretty crowded territory there. Lots of green and gold jerseys near the touchline. And Rangahuna stepping into touch. Now he's claiming, as Ayoub did a few minutes ago, that he got touched before he went into touch. But that's not the way the referee saw it, and so possession turned over to Australia. Infringement by New Zealand. Taken up by Craig Pearce. It's Captain Scott Notley. Brindel. Pearce again.
He's a great player, that's Scott Notley, the Australian captain. You can hear him talking and organising the play, and much of their big plays comes off his shots and his calls.
There he is, Scott Notley. But he got picked up, or did he, just before the line? Yes. It remains at 2-0. Very close call for the New Zealanders. The elusive Australian captain, Scott Notley, showing tremendous speed once he received the ball. The touch made on Gary Nipper. Nigel Houghton across to Eric Rush, who's come back onto the field for the last 5 minutes of the first half. The
New Zealand side penalised for obstruction there again. The pace of the game really will tell more on the New Zealand side than it will on the Australians, because of the comparable differences that have been used in the technical side of it. The Australians have maintained the game at a quick pace, running close to the ball area, whereas New Zealand have involved a lot more players by going a little bit wider, which I'd say going into the half, Brindel, would mean that our guys will be lacking a little bit in petrol.
It's been a familiar pattern from throughout the week, the Australians. And there's the dummy half now. He's got to make the pass, and he does. Oh, that was good teamwork by the Australians. As Bob Brindel, the dummy half, he skipped through the New Zealand defence, but he had to find a teammate.
Yeah, we see here that touch by the New Zealand player doesn't count because he was inside the 5. And we see the Australian player, Bob Brindel, keep his head, finds a player unmarked, and that was a great bit of backing up there. Well, was it Scott Notley again to score the 3rd try for the Australian side? And I tell you, they look terrific, and they'll be very difficult to beat at this point in time.
Australia ahead by 3-0 as New Zealand restarted with a penalty tap.
Yeah, and to New Zealand's credit, they've managed to get down to the Australians' line fairly quickly. But again, they get down there, get the Australians under pressure, and then they slow the game up by holding up the ball like this. But in actual fact, what they want to be doing is forcing the ball, hitting it flat on the advantage line, dumping it, and trying to play off a good go forward, Brendan.
Sounds very easy, Ken.
It's easy from up here, mate.
That's right.
You know, it would be a different story if the New Zealand side were leading 3-0, but they're down by 3-0, and they've really got to force the pace of the game if they're going to claw back 3 tries.
Well, every team here at this World Cup have had extraordinary difficulty penetrating the Australia defence. They've only conceded 10 tries in 10 games. And 3 of those were conceded in 1 match. New Zealand, who have been beaten twice during the week by Western Samoa yesterday and earlier in the week by Australia, and also held to a 4-all draw in their opening match by Niue. In fact, only really just scraped through to the final when they turned around and beat Western Samoa last night in the 2nd match against the Samoans yesterday. They were forced to play an extra match after they got beaten in the 1st semi-final. Eric Rush across to that man who was out unmarked near the touchline. That was Wally Rifle. He lost his footing, and a try went begging.
Yeah, well, it was a planned move, and Wally knew that the ball was coming. He really should have held on to this. We see the quick dump. The player goes to the right. Eric Rush turns the ball back inside to the captain, Peter Walters. A ball over the top to Wally Rifle. It was difficult, but at this level, he should have caught it.
New Zealand still on attack and still with possession. 5 metres from the Australian line. McCurran across to Eric Rush. The New Zealand captain, Peter Walters. As the chessmen move slowly down the chessboard. The game almost in suspended animation as Walters trying to slow it down. There's an opportunity here, but look at the Australian defenders. They closed in on Rifle, even though he looked to be unmarked when Walters was moving across the field. We talk about the Australian attacking skills, but there's nothing much wrong with their defence either.
One area where they do have a clear advantage, both individually and collectively as a team, is in the area, Brendan, of organised defence. If we can watch them here, look, they slide, they adjust well, they move together as a group. They very rarely get caught 1 or 2 out of the line. They manage to hold the line, they communicate, and also we can hear them from up here just calling out the New Zealand players and nominating the opposition players, which makes it very difficult to be able to get through. What New Zealand's doing now by slowing the game up, they're just playing into the Australian hands because it's an opportunity for them to recover, get back a little bit of juice, and when they get the ball back, they'll have plenty of running in them.
Rangahuna to Eric Rush, and a certain rush from Eric Rush a couple of metres from the line. I thought he had stepped clear of the Australian defender, but they must have got a finger on him. McCurran. New Zealand.
Again, well, that set of 6 didn't amount to much for the New Zealand side, and the Australian team now have got the ball back, and they'll be pretty fresh after that slow set by New Zealand.
So New Zealand, I guess, unable to find the Midas touch in the first 20 minutes of this match, down by 3-0, as the Australians, who have been on defence for the last couple of minutes, now have an opportunity to attack the New Zealand line. Shane Rigby falling over and the ball touching the ground. Turn over to New Zealand. McCurran across to Horton. This is Barry Clemis. Richard Barnett. Nigel Horton again. John Rangahuna. Nigel Horton again. 6 or 7 metres from the Australian line.
Yeah, well, they played very well then in those first 4 touches to be able to advance the football up as far as they have in such short time. But again, we see which has become a traditional part of the New Zealand style here with Mackie Harawini holding up the ball and again taunting the Australians, trying to force one of them to come out. But you have a look at the Australian side, they're back on the defensive line and they're 5 metre there. They're quite happy to just sit there, anticipate the play again. While this is happening, they're recovering physically, so when they get the ball back, they'll be full of attack, Brindel.
Harawini in the end has to take the ball to the Australians, nearly left behind, well recovered by Harawini. Rangahuni is going to have the Australians on his own. Wally Reichel, but runs into 2 Australians on the 5 metre zone.
Again, we won't see anything too non-conservative from the Australians, Brindel. They'll just play closer to play the ball area and try and improve their field position.
So it's virtually half-time in the dying moments of the first half in Australia with this very comfortable 3-0 lead. Been on top since the opening minute of the match when they posted their first try, the first 60 seconds. And here they go looking for number 4, Marinos. But coming across and making the touch was Nigel Hoffman for New Zealand.
The Australians quite content on the last to run from dummy half to get tagged, leave the ball on the touchline, knowing that the New Zealand side must bring the ball to the open to get some yards. Good play by the Australians.
Rifle. Barry Clemis still inside the Australian half. Peter Walters. Now this is better running from the New Zealanders, showing some aggression and pace, scooping the ball up quickly off the field. Once the touch has been made, Walters running wide. He's got support there from Nep. Eric Rush plays at dummy half. Richard Barnett can't get away from Patrick Bree in the Australian. That's 6 completed for New Zealand.
Yeah, that was a very good 6 from New Zealand as well. Played at a good pace and they managed to maintain momentum right throughout the set. Australia will have to work hard now to clear their quarter.
And there's the hooter to signal the end of the first 25 minutes. And the referee confirms that. That is half-time here at Avondale. And the men's open final for the World Cup tournament. The title very much on the line, but Australia with a solid grip on it at half-time. They lead by 3-0. We'll be back with more right after this break.
The King Touch.
Welcome back to the smoke-free grand finals day at the second Touch World Cup, and we're seeing a fine polished performance by the Aussie Open men. They're leading the Kiwis by 3-0 at halftime in their grand final. It hasn't been the best of days for New Zealand, but this tournament really has been a learning thing for the Kiwis, and I think they've bridged the gap quite a bit from the last World Cup. And the men, well, they really have to dig in deep now and try and keep their scoreline to no more than 3 tries to 0. Let's hope they can even fight back and maybe even force a playoff a little later on in extra time. But plenty of action still to come on One World of Sport. In a moment, we'll be back to our commentators, Brendan Telfer and Ken Laban, for the second half.